Hello, everyone. I am so excited to introduce you today to Amy Nielson from Planning Playtime. So, we've been in each other's worlds, Amy, for many years. I think we've been both blogging, having our websites for a decade or so now. So, it's so great to finally meet you in person and introduce your work, which you're doing an incredible amount of work within the Planning Playtime early education space, just like we have a lot of our audience. So, to get started, thanks for being here. And let's talk about your background, your work, kind of your passion. How did you come to start Planning Playtime?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And yes, happy to talk about it. Kind of had a very unconventional journey into what I do. It's funny because I'm in the education space and we have like 2 million parents, teachers all over the world that use our products and things. But I only finished one grade of public education. And it was kindergarten. So that was my one and only grade. Yay. I finished. And then my family moved around a lot all over the country. And also, my parents would just kind of like put us in public schools or take us out or whatever, right? So I'd be like for school 3 months in New York, and I'd be at school for a few months in Arizona and maybe a few months in Colorado or Utah, and then we'd be out again. And so I got like little parts of different grades in different states. But my mom was a trained educator. She was a certified teacher, and she came home to raise 12 children. Oh my goodness. Yes, there's so many of us. And I love them all. And we're like besties and it's great. But yeah, so she was like homeschooling a lot of us for some of the time. And then homeschool kind of became like we kind of educated ourselves. By like about third grade, you were kind of in charge of your own education for the most part. And so that was kind of what happened. And then all of a sudden, at 15, I'm trying to teach myself, and I'm like trying to find books, and I'm borrowing like college textbooks or getting them used from a bookstore or something, and my mom was like, well, why don't you just go to college? And I was like, oh, can you do that? I didn't know that was a thing. Anyway, so I did. I was able to get in and start college right when I kind of turned 16. And so then, yeah. When I was at university, I started teaching reading in a local elementary school. And this one day, I got to work with all these kiddos. Some of them were doing okay, and some were really struggling with reading. And I had this cutest boy, 5 years old, just the funnest. Those kids that are just so fun, but really have a hard
Mhm.
time sitting still. And this kid,
Mhm.
oh, we had a good time, but he did not like to read. He hated it so much. So one day I'm like, dude, okay, we can't have any more fun until you like read at least one page. Like you have to read one page of this book that I'm supposed to be reading with him, out in the hallway, right? And he looks up at me with just these gigantic tears in his
Mhm.
eyes, and he says, "I thought you were my friend."
Oh,
And I was like, my 18-year-old heart or whatever was just crushed. And I went home for the
yeah.
weekend and I was like, oh, like reading is like the best thing in the world. And how have we ruined this for
Yes.
children? Because it's
Mhm.
supposed to be so good and they hate it, and there's something wrong, and I was angry, and I thought we are doing something wrong and we are ruining reading for children. And so I spent, that whole weekend like trying to come up with ways to make reading fun again, in my college dorm. So many resources, that we have
Yes.
there, but but I did the best I could, and I went back and spent the rest of the year just trying to make reading so fun, and they like asked me to come back the next year as a supervisor. It was kind of this funny thing, but um
Right.
so that's kind of, I think, where I really got my passion for like bringing play-based learning to schools. I think as a child, I kind of had the most incredible mother on the planet that just made everything fun, right? And so
Mhm.
so it was ingrained in who I was. And I didn't grow up with any technology or whatever. So we didn't have toys. We had to make our own fun. So I was used to that. But then bringing it into education, I think kind of started back then. And then when I was working
Gosh,
with my own kids, we had videos go viral and everyone wanted more of what we did. And so that's kind of how it all happened.
that's incredible, Amy. What a story.
Isn't
Like
that
I
wild?
just, yeah, it's totally wild. But in in there is, like you said, it's ingrained in you, because I was going to ask you about, like, what are you seeing in schools right now? Because I think as an educator myself, I think, yes, play based is so obvious. Like, of course it's play based, right? But there's so many other things going on now in the world, right? So what are you seeing are some of those barriers, some of the things that our schools are going through? And why is it more important than ever to bring back play-based learning?
Well, I think it's such a struggle because there's a lot of things going on, right? So we have so many children per classroom, which makes things challenging, right? Because you're trying to manage
Mhm,
like the classroom, and then you have kids at different levels, and you have kids with different behavioral needs and different sensory needs, all the different things, right? And so you're trying to work with so many kids at once. So of course that is hugely
mhm,
challenging. And then another thing is that in our efforts to try to like encourage and help kids perform better and bring everyone up, we've kind of given teachers all of these like requirements, and you have to do all this, and they have to pass these tests, and they have to be able to do this, and oh, we're kind of grading your school based on this, and this might affect your different
mm,
things. And so there's so much pressure to like get all this knowledge and pass these tests, and learn the exact facts you need to do this and that, and then there's not enough time. We're asking teachers to
mm,
do more than we've ever asked them to do, and it's
mhm.
just so much, right? And
Yeah,
so many kids. And so it's incredibly challenging. And when you get into groups with teachers online, they're saying like, why has it changed so much? Like, I thought this was supposed to be something different, and
yeah,
they're taking play out of school, and this is so hard. And so I think teachers are just as frustrated
yeah,
as some of the rest of us, that like we see the problem, and yet we feel kind of like, I think a lot of them feel kind of stuck in the regulations and the way that the system is built and works. And so
yeah.
what I wanted to do when I started was kind of find some way to bridge those two things and say, teachers, I see you. I
Mhm,
know that you have to have all these things. There's all these lists, right, of things that you have to check the boxes of. And so what I can do is use my brain that came, from my mom and my upbringing and all the crazy stuff, and I can find a
mm,
way to like take what you have to do and just gamify it and make it
yes,
ridiculously playful and fun and hands-on,
yeah,
so that you can do all the stuff you're supposed to do, but do what the kids need to, which is bring in all of that hands-on sensory play and just put it all
right.
together. And so it's like this magical combination of getting all the stuff, but it being something that really works for a child's brain.
Yes. Yes, and there's so much in what you said that uh, just yesterday on Instagram, one of our, members said, how do I as a kids yoga teacher, the school director wants the children to be calm and quiet. They don't want me to come in and play games and make yoga playful, right? And so
Oh,
that is a thing that I can see now in schools, that the directors and teachers, they have, like you said, they have so much going on. They have the pressure and everything, but also play sometimes occurs as loud, and it's very dysregulating for adults when you're in the classroom and you say the classes are bigger, and there's bigger behavior. So the play looks different, and play, we have to, as you say, get to a place where play doesn't equal loud. You can still have hands-on and playful activities that are quiet and calming, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think also, to piggyback what you're saying, I think there's a lot of pressure also from parents, right?
mm,
It's not just the teachers, it's not just the administration, but here, the things that I hear in the school I'm working at, that what the parents are asking the teachers to do is unbelievable,
that's a
right?
lot.
So
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, I agree. I think we all need to step back and think, who are we servicing here? It's the
Yeah.
child, right? Let's
Well, and
make it
what's
fun,
interesting,
right?
I think, we're trying to get to the same goal. And so if
Mm,
if we understand, if we can step back for a minute and understand how a child's brain works, right?
right.
This learning that happens with play and engaged, like, learning is so much more effective and long lasting
Mhm.
than just like memorization. And like
Right.
when you look at, when you talk to psychologists that are studying brain, right, they will show you like these are stronger connections, right? If the other kind,
Yeah.
it kind of, you get it in the memory, but it kind of is like that box of Christmas storage that's underneath all the other boxes in the back shelf behind all the things. And so
Right.
children have a really hard time retrieving that later, right? And if you've
Mm.
ever like crammed for a test and you memorized a bunch of things and you were able to spit it back out, but then how impactful was it really in your life? I remember when I went to my parents moved again, right? So I was trying to get into ninth grade in Arizona, and they wouldn't let me into ninth grade in Arizona. And it was because I hadn't passed the Arizona State history test. And that's a requirement to go to ninth grade in Arizona. And I said, but I was in New York. And it turns out they don't teach the Arizona State history
Mhm.
class in New York. That's just not a thing. And they're like, well, I'm
Right.
sorry, you can go to eighth grade, you can go to 10th grade, but you can't do ninth grade because you haven't taken the Arizona State history test. And so I'm like, well,
Hmm.
can I take the Arizona State history test? And they're like, sure. So they gave me like a thing to go, like the study guide. And they're like, go study this, come back tomorrow and take the Arizona State history test. So I did. And I passed the Arizona State history test. And guess how much I remember from Arizona State history?
Right.
Not a single thing.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
you can do that, but it's just not the really good kind of learning that we really
Yeah.
want that builds those really strong connections in the brain. And so that's really
Yeah.
important. And going back to your message around play, it was so funny because it just had this really interesting chat with someone about this on my podcast. And I was talking to a musician and we were talking about her job as she's coming into these classrooms and working with kids is to be able to get them excited and then bring them back
Mm.
down. And she
Mhm.
actually talked about the skill that, and I thought it was so fascinating and so beautiful. She said, what we're actually doing is teaching children how to do that in their own lives because
Mm. Yeah.
they have to be able to come up and go down. That's a normal
Yes.
emotion flow. And so when we can
Yeah.
model that for them as a teacher, as a musician, as a leader, right? And we come in and we show them how to come up and then how to come back down. And so she uses it in her music and lyrics and the tempo and all of that. And I
Yeah.
just thought, oh, that's so good. So how do we do
Yes.
that? It's okay to be like a little bit loud sometimes as long as we can come back down again. And so learning how to kind of help do some of those things. And then of course there is a lot of calm play that can happen. Or sometimes we do loud play and we go outside. And being
Yeah.
outside is
Yes.
great for the brain too. So
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that and you what you said there about the musicians, exactly what our kids yoga classes are. And there's a similar outline too in adults classes, by the way, too. You start slow and then you have the more physical postures and you always end up in the resting pose. Same with kids yoga, right? You're using that same
mhm.
um arc so that they can go back to class ultimately ready to learn. And that's
Mhm.
actually exactly what we're looking at too. So
Yes.
let's talk about some tips. What tips have you got for us to, create this creative, engaging, playful classroom or home life, but you've got big behaviors. Okay. You might be completely exhausted yourself and you really just don't have a lot of time to plan. How do we make that happen?
Oh gosh, so many challenging things, right? So I
Yeah.
would say that one of the number one things is children, how much of our communication is nonverbal, right? It's somewhere between like 73 and 90%, depending on what studies you look at. So when we come in and we're like, kids, learning is so great, right? What
Mm,
are they hearing? Learning sucks. It's terrible. It's so boring, right? So I think
right.
whatever energy we do have, and that's so hard if you're so tired and you're burnout and you have
Mm,
all the things. But I do
right.
think children are watching what we're doing. And to that point too, sometimes I feel like when I'm getting kind of like uh losing my excitement around learning, sometimes what I need is to go learn something so I can remember
Mm,
how fun it is. So I'll go and
right.
like start learning a language, or I'll go learn how to do like a new skill. Like I want to learn how to knit. I've
Right.
never learned how to, it's just like it's
Yeah.
just a weird new thing. It doesn't really matter what
Yes.
it is, but what's something you can learn. And then I can come back and be like, hey, kids, I've been learning something new. I learned how to tie balloon animals this weekend and I learned how to make a
Right.
lion and it was awesome. Right. And so what we're doing is
Yeah.
we're saying learning is like cool and I'm still doing it as an adult because it's cool. So I think
Right.
anytime, whatever of that energy you can bring, that is, you're preaching that learning is awesome when you're doing that. And then I think
Yeah.
just small things, when you can bring in, I actually feel like bringing play into learning makes it easier a lot of the time because the kids actually want to do it. And
Yeah.
so when you
Exactly.
can bring that in, that helps a lot. And so if you don't have the ideas, and I feel like a lot of times people feel like they don't have the ideas, and ideas take energy. Like our brain is like the
Mhm.
most calorie burning like part of our body, right? So it takes
Right.
energy. So if you don't, that's okay. There's people that do that for you and just come up with a plan and have done it for you to just make it as easy as possible. And so I would say find something that works for you, and then just maybe start in stages, right? Because
Hmm.
like 1% gains are a whole lot better than like trying really hard for a week and then being like, I can't do this anymore and being done. So
Yeah.
focus maybe on like one little change. Like where's one place you can add more play? Can you add a little more play to your circle time? Can you add a little more play to, your math centers, or, whatever it is, and just start like with little things and then build onto it. And hopefully you'll kind of start to see that like, oh, this isn't so bad, right? Like you don't have to
Right.
have all play-based centers all of a sudden, right? You can start with 2 or 3 for the month. And if that's all you can do, awesome. Now you have those set up for next year. And then maybe you can add a couple more and it builds over time.
Right. I love that. I love that in stages and also meeting the students where they're at, right?
Mhm.
Because I feel like more now than when I was a younger teacher, but the classroom dynamics are legit, Amy, right? You walk into one classroom and they're amazing, they're ready to learn, they're regulated, they work well as a team, and you could do so much more, obviously,
Mhm.
with that kind of group, right? You walk into another classroom down the hall and you've got huge behaviors and they're setting each other off and there are many children who are dysregulated and it is really hard and the teacher is burnt out. It's exhausting, right? And so I think with those two situations you've got to meet the group dynamics where it is, and as you say, start slow. The first thing is to regulate yourself, right,
Yes.
to get yourself back into that play mindset and having a bit of a sense of humor, and then have that be a part of your class. And really, it's almost like we need to stop. Some of these classrooms we need to, or even groups in homeschool groups or wherever, or in studios, wherever we are, right? Is just stop and really work on the social emotional learning. Get that ground, just like when you build a house, right? You got to get your foundation. So it's almost like you've got to work on these foundations first, right?
Yeah, I am in an interesting. You're bringing up things for me. So I volunteer at my children's elementary school as their choir accompanist. So I get to go and play the piano for them. So we have this group, and it's like 60 children in the elementary school choir. It's kind of a big choir. So 60 kids at like 7:45 in the morning, right? And they are, see, they have a lot of, energy and personality, a lot of them. And we have one child in particular who can make things a little tricky some of the time and just has lots of energy and probably some attention challenges. And so it's been really interesting. We just got a new choir director at the beginning of this term. And it's been so interesting to watch her like figuring out how to try to bring everything back. And one of the things that I've just loved is that she's brought a lot of movement. So I love that you're talking about
Yes.
yoga because movement
Yeah.
is so closely related, I think, with play, and they're both so
Yes.
valuable. And so
Right.
she brings in movement. So if she notices that children are really starting to struggle, she'll have them come out and she'll have them sing while they're marching in like a circle or something. So they're
Mhm.
marching to the beat, but they're moving,
I
or
love it.
she'll have them move or do different things. And so I think, yeah, just finding creative ways to kind of, like you said, meet them where they're at, because sometimes
Mhm.
that's what we have to do and get
Yes.
and
Right.
figure it out from there. But then, you're able to sometimes kind of bring it back, and we can go back to the stairs and sit down and kind of practice. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about too, is bringing those two things together, looking at like what's our curriculum, what do we have to do, what are the pressures, the demands that we have, and be the child where they're at, not just their temperament, their preferences, their sensory needs, all those things, but also what they're interested in. And
Yeah.
so marrying that together, maybe there's parts of the curriculum that you can engage them with, not just the play, but also the topics, right?
Yes.
So in yoga, we do the same thing, right? That we've got all these different topics that we can use to engage children to get the buy-in, right? So it's not just
Yes.
that it's playful, but are we going to act like mermaids? Are we acting like superheroes? Whatever, to make it really fun for them, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely. And kids love to learn when it's
Mm,
when it's like relevant to them. We were doing
exactly.
I do like I call it side schooling with my kids, because they love going to public schools. They love the social environment. We have good schools here with lots of opportunities. So we do side schooling. So we were doing like ancient history last summer, and we were learning about ancient China, and we were talking about the
Mm,
Great Wall. And so we, used the topography of our living room to like, build the Great Wall. And they were they were
oh my
they were trying to
gosh.
conserve their resources, which happened to be fruit snacks, right? So they were hiding the fruit snacks and trying to protect them from invaders from the north. And then of
Right.
course my teenage daughters were like the invaders from the north and came down the stairs, and and so it was this whole battle going on and trying to
Oh
hide
my
the fruit
goodness.
snacks and all the things and people attacking the great
Mhm.
wall. It was amazing and they had so much
Yes.
fun, right? And they're learning. So and
Mhm.
was it a little chaotic? Yes, but you know what? I had their buy-in
Mm.
and they helped me clean up afterwards and it was fine. So
Yes.
and we can't do those things all the time, but I love that you were
Right.
talking about like how do we make it like personal to them and get their buy-in on it. And sometimes that's bringing mermaids and, dinosaurs into math.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes it's pretending to be, you know, people in history or, whatever.
Right.
There's so many
Right.
options and I love it.
Right. And looking at that, you're learning about China. On the opposite side, you could have presented that as such a boring, uninteresting situation for them, right? But you're using what makes it relevant and meaningful, and they've got their own games going on, so it's theirs. They're empowered to learn, right? I love that story. That's really great.
So
Yeah,
much fun. Yeah.
yeah. So, what advice do you have for the educators, parents, caregivers, homeschoolers, people out there in our community, in both of our communities, right? That they want to integrate play-based learning, but for lots of different reasons, whether the children have the big behaviors and they're afraid to it be too disruptive, or they're afraid of the administration walking by and not agreeing, or if it's a kids yoga teacher that the director sees them and doesn't agree with what they're doing, making it playful, or they just don't really know where to start. Sort of, what advice do you have for teachers that to get them going?
Yeah. Well, I would say number one, give yourself grace. I'm all about like
Mm,
giving yourself grace and having some
yeah,
self-compassion. There's the most
yeah,
amazing like TED talk out there on self-compassion, the space between self-esteem and self-compassion. Love it. Watch it. But I think that's just a beautiful place to start because then
mm,
there's not all the pressure and we can just say, okay, like this is such a cool thing and there's space for me to grow in this and it's going to be a
yeah,
journey and we'll figure it out as we go. So I think that is such a beautiful place to start because we are always going to be healthier if we can give
mm,
ourselves some
yes,
self-compassion. So I
yes,
would say always start there, especially if you have kids with major behavioral issues and if you're having stress with possible administrative, there's so many things or parents that are putting pressure, all that stuff. It's so hard.
yes,
So give yourself
yeah,
grace, self-compassion. And then the next thing I would say is just start with something. Start small, start somewhere. And maybe that is like getting a plan like we have actually a lot of teachers using so we have a lot of teachers using our printables, right?
yeah,
That are like just done for you, kind of made for you. But we also have some that just get our mommy and me preschool programs. Our mommy and me preschool program is all about play. It's just like use stuff you already
yes,
have in your cupboard, pull it out, and
right.
you can be learning in 10 minutes and just playing. So if you
Mhm,
find what works for you, like if you are a researcher and you want to get on Pinterest and Instagram and follow all the people and do all of the big things, then do that. If you are someone who's like, I need my nights and my weekends and like I just need something done for me, then find there are
yes,
so many good options for you
yes,
out there with people that
right,
have created that for you. So I'd find it and then I'd start again looking at 1%, right? Like those 1% gains. Atomic Habits is like one of the most
yes,
amazing books ever, right? And
right,
so
right, yeah,
just start and then you'll like see the difference and start with something that you feel like is doable because consistency I
mhm,
think is so valuable and matters so much.
yeah,
And then the students start to buy in and I think it's really cool because you start to notice these kids. I was talking to a mom on our podcast recently on my podcast and she was talking about our reading program, our play to read reading program. It's like a play-based phonics program. And she said, my oldest daughter is like really focused and just wants to sit down and do all the work. Right. And she said, so that was awesome. Right. And then
yeah,
next kid comes along and she is like up and down and all over the place. And like, just, and she's like,
right,
so we got out frogs and we jumped and did all the, which is built right into our reading program. So it works so great. And she said
mm,
that was one of the things she loved is that it works for different kids.
yes,
So
right,
don't be afraid to like think outside the box a little bit
yeah,
and just bring in toys and bring in movement and just like bring it to what you're already doing. You don't have to
yes,
change everything. Is there a way to like bring in toys to what you're already doing? And then
right,
it's a game or bring in dominoes or bring in dice or whatever and you just
yes.
bring it to what you're already doing and it's immediately a game.
Right, I love that. If when my daughter was young, if I'd known about your membership back then, I totally would have signed up because I'm that kind of person. I just want to sign up. I just want to, come to, all done for you, print, play, great. And it's stuff that's already in my house. I don't have to go buy a bunch of things. I totally would have signed up. That's amazing. Right. And I love what you're saying there too about it has to start with us. So as you say, if we're wanting to be play based, let's be play based ourselves. Like we talk about that in yoga. If you want to practice yoga or introduce to children, you've got to start with yourself, right? You have
Yeah.
to start your own yoga, mindfulness, meditation practice, get yourself calm and organized, whatever that may be, right? It's got to come from you. And same for that, it sounds like you said, I want to go learn a language or I want to go, do something more playful that, bring that sense of excitement and enthusiasm to your life as well, right? It'll have ripple effects to the children
And
you work
it's
with.
so valuable. There's so much research on like
Yeah.
how valuable play is not only for children, but for adults. We still need
Yes.
play. And I think somehow
Yeah.
we like forgot that we like still need play. It's like a human need, not a child need. And so
Yes.
if we can find ways to, like you said, to start with us, like what is
Yeah.
one way you can be more playful yourself, and what does that look
Yes.
like for you? Because it might look different. Maybe you're a sports person and you want to go do some intramural, sport, or maybe play for you is painting and you just want to go create art, or
Yes.
maybe
Right.
it's like going for a run outside and or competing
Yes.
in triathlons. I don't know, whatever
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
right? But
Right.
finding just some way to like
Yeah.
to still play, and then
Yes.
and then it feels more true to who you are, and we just like to be silly too, and
Yes.
silliness is a big thing. So if that's inside of you, I know it's not everybody's not silly, but that's a thing. I'm not afraid to be silly with kids because they love it, and it
Right.
doesn't make us any less serious or capable or any of those things. It just means that we can take ourselves not seriously all the time and have fun and be
Right.
playful. And so I think that can be really valuable, and I actually connect with children a lot that way, and they feel more safe, I think, sometimes with me because it feels a lot like how they feel inside. They
Yeah.
want to play,
Right.
and I do too. So and then
Yeah.
we can be serious too, and we can do both, and I can model that for them.
Right. And you don't have to be someone who's one of 12 or that you're traveling around America, right? And being homeschooled. You can be in any situation just to do something different, right? It could be just something different that you're doing during the week that sparks that excitement in you. And that's it. Yeah, I love it.
I hear
So
it
where
from our community
Mhm.
members all the time, and it's so fun to hear the ideas they come up with. And sometimes, like if
Yeah.
you start following someone that does this regularly, like they'll get some of our products in, and it just sparks their own ideas, right? And
Yes,
so
right.
sometimes being around someone who has ideas or using a curriculum that's built on these kinds of ideas starts your brain going,
Yes.
and then the kids actually start coming up with all of their own ideas because suddenly it's safe
Yes.
to do that. This is how we learn. So now they're actually going back to their public school classrooms and telling their teachers, well, what if we did it like this and played with these toys while we did it, right? And so
Yes.
they're
Love
like,
it.
yeah, it's amazing.
That's awesome. So how can we find you online? Sort of tell us all about your programs, your memberships, and what's next for you.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, so I'm planningplaytime.com, and we have a couple of things. We have our, if you're going just wanting like kind of done for you printables, right? Like for your math and literacy centers, then our membership is amazing. It has all of that stuff, and we come out with new stuff all the time. It's fantastic. Um, if you're looking for something more like built for moms, or if you're kind of just wanting like ideas that are less printables and more just like play ideas, then we have our Mommy Me preschool program that's like amazing. So there's that. And then if you have kiddos ready to read, our Play to Read program is like one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. It like taking phonics and the latest science of reading and then like making it awesome. I've never seen anything like it. It's fantastic. So those are kind of our big three things that I love to share with people because they change lives, and yours as well as your kids. And they're just,
Awesome.
yeah.
And you've got a podcast too. So tell us where we can find your podcast.
Yeah, so it's called Raising Healthy Kid Brains. And basically, I get to talk to like top psychologists and therapists and neuroscientists and best-selling authors, and we just talk about brains. So and just like how to parent that emotional regulation stuff we talk about.
Hmm.
I just had the most amazing episode yesterday where we talked about. Um, like personalities, and like we think,
Mm.
she was like, we think that we're like parenting someone like ourselves because they're our kids, and she's like, but what we really need to do is like figure out who the kid is in front of us and parent them. I was
Yes.
like, oh my goodness. And so like these
Yes.
four different like personality categories, and she breaks it down. It was fascinating. I'm like,
Yeah. I
oh my
love it.
goodness. So anyway, love it.
Mhm.
Super fun podcast. Come check us
Awesome.
out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. I so appreciate your time. Thanks for
Of
being
course.
here.
Thank you.